The coffee cup trembled in my hand when I felt a small presence beside me. I looked up from my laptop screen and found myself face to face with a 6-year-old boy, disheveled brown hair and blue eyes that sparkled with a determination that caught me completely off guard. I was at my usual Starbucks, the one in the financial district where I always managed to work in peace before my morning meetings. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with impressive politeness for someone so small. "Could you be my mommy for just one day?" I froze. In 42 years of life, building a financial empire from scratch, facing Wall Street sharks daily, nothing had ever left me speechless. The boy kept talking, his little words tumbling over each other in his hurry to explain. "Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. It's just, there's a presentation at school today, and all the other kids are bringing their mommies. My dad works a lot and can't go, and I thought maybe you look like a movie mommy." A tall man rushed over, clearly the child's father. His face was red with embarrassment, his hands dirty from hard work, his clothes simple but clean. Everything about him screamed working class, the absolute opposite of my world. "Tommy, I'm so sorry. Ma'am, I told him not to bother people." Jack Miller quickly introduced himself, trying to pull his son by the arm. "He has this fixed idea about—" "No," I interrupted, surprising myself. "It's fine." Why on earth was I even considering it? Maybe it was the way Tommy looked at me with such pure hope that it hurt. Or maybe it was because in that moment he vaguely reminded me of Elise when we were kids, always a dreamer, always believing in the impossible. "What kind of presentation is it?" I asked, closing my laptop. Tommy's eyes lit up like fireworks. "It's about professions. Everyone's going to talk about their mommy's or daddy's job. But since I only have a daddy, I thought I could have a borrowed mommy." Jack looked mortified. "Tommy, ma'am must have important things to do." "I do," I replied, putting my laptop in my bag. "But I can reschedule." The morning at the elementary school was a complete culture shock. Me, Eleanor Grant, CEO of Grant Equity Holdings, sitting in a colorful plastic chair listening to 6-year-olds talk about firefighters, teachers, and salespeople. When it was Tommy's turn, he held my hand with a confidence that disarmed me. "This is Eleanor. She takes care of a lot of people's money and has important meetings every day. She's really smart and wears pretty clothes." The other kids bombarded me with questions. What was it like to work in a tall building? Why did I wear heels? Did I have kids? This last question hit me like a punch to the gut, bringing back memories of Elise that I had buried for years. During lunch at school, Tommy shared his peanut butter sandwich with me. "Daddy makes the best sandwich in the world," he said proudly. "He works really hard to take care of me all by himself." "Your mom," I started hesitantly. "She went to heaven when I was 2. Daddy said she loved me very much, but she got sick." The simplicity with which he spoke broke my heart. It was exactly how Elise had left us, postpartum depression that no one could cure, which took her away when her daughter was only a few months old. In the following days, something inexplicable happened. Tommy started showing up at Starbucks at the same time, always with Jack in tow, apologizing. But I didn't mind. In fact, I started looking forward to those encounters. "Why don't you have a family?" Tommy asked one day, with that brutal honesty only kids have. "I have work," I replied automatically. "Work isn't family," he retorted, swinging his little legs on the high chair. "Family is people who love you even when you mess up." Jack tried to scold him, but I raised my hand. He's right. It was then that I started accompanying them home sometimes. The small apartment in Queens was a parallel universe to my Manhattan penthouse. Toys scattered everywhere, drawings on the fridge, the smell of homemade food, everything my life lacked. During a simple dinner of pasta with tomato sauce, I watched Jack and Tommy interact. The love between them was palpable, natural, without the complications I associated with relationships. Jack was gentle without being weak. Tommy was obedient without losing his vibrant personality. "Eleanor," Tommy suddenly said, "do you want to be my real mommy?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jack turned red, starting to stammer an apology, but I was focused on the hope in the child's eyes. "Tommy, these things are complicated," I began. "No, they're not. You like us. We like you. Daddy's happy when you're here." I looked at Jack, who quickly averted his gaze, but not before I saw something there that made my heart race. Everything changed when the photos appeared in the New York Post. "Billionaire plays house," screamed the headline, with pictures of us leaving Tommy's school. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Investors, board members, journalists. The scandal had begun. "Maybe it's better if I step away for a while," I told Jack that night, ignoring Tommy's tear-filled eyes. "Eleanor, no," Jack tried to argue. "We don't care about those people." But I was already walking out the door, fleeing as I always did when things got too real, too intense. It was easier to go back to my world of numbers and contracts than to face the feelings that this small family had awakened in me. That's when Daniel Marks showed up. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm I knew was approaching, but for which I was never adequately prepared. I was at the Queens County Courthouse at 8 in the morning, wearing my most conservative suit, navy blue, nothing flashy, trying to look respectable instead of intimidating. My lawyer, Richard Chen, one of New York's best in family law, had briefed me on every possible scenario, but nothing had prepared me to see Tommy sitting between Jack and a social worker. The little blue eyes that had captivated me that first day at Starbucks now looked lost, confused about why so many adults were deciding his future without asking his opinion. Jack was tense, wearing a borrowed suit that was slightly too big for him, but he maintained the dignity I had always admired. Across the room, Daniel Marks introduced himself as the concerned uncle, accompanied by his own legal team. "Your Honor," Daniel's lawyer, Dr. Harrison Webb, began, "my client seeks only the best interests of the child. Mr. Jack Miller, though well-intentioned, clearly lacks the financial resources to provide Tommy Miller with the educational and social opportunities a child deserves. My client, as the only available blood relative, offers traditional family stability and financial security." I felt my jaw clench. The man's hypocrisy was revolting. Over the past few months, I had thoroughly investigated Daniel Marks. He had shown no interest in Tommy until he found out about my involvement. His motivations were transparent, a combination of greed and resentment toward Jack. Richard stood up for our defense. "Your Honor, we respectfully disagree. Mr. Jack Miller has raised Tommy Miller alone since he was 2 years old. He has established a stable routine, maintained steady employment, and provided a loving environment where the child thrives academically and socially. Furthermore, Miss Eleanor Grant, present here, has developed a genuine relationship with the family and is willing to offer additional support." "Additional support?" Webb interrupted with a sarcastic smile. "Your Honor, Ms. Grant is known for her intense professional life and lack of experience with children. I question whether this support represents true family commitment or simply a temporary whim of a rich person." Those words hit me like slaps, not because they were cruel, but because they contained a seed of truth that I myself questioned. Was my love for Tommy and Jack genuine, or just a fantasy of someone who had lost her way in life? The judge, Honorable Margaret Chen, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and a serious expression, listened to the initial arguments before addressing Jack directly. "Mr. Miller, can you tell us about your current financial situation?" Jack stood up, clearly nervous but determined. "Your Honor, I work 3 different jobs: morning deliveries, construction during the day, and cleaning at night twice a week. I earn approximately $45,000 a year. It's not much, but I've always managed to pay our bills and give Tommy everything he needs." "And what is your opinion on Mr. Marks's request?" "Respectfully, Your Honor, Tommy is my son, not biologically, but in every way that matters. I've been there for every nightmare, every first day of school, every important moment of his life. Daniel Marks only showed up 3 months ago, after the photos with Eleanor came out in the newspapers." Daniel stood up abruptly. "Objection, that's speculation." "Mr. Marks," the judge said coldly, "you will have your opportunity to speak. Sit down." Richard then called me to testify. I walked to the front of the room, feeling all eyes on me. Tommy gave me a small wave, which almost made me break down right there. "Ms. Grant," Richard began, "can you tell us how you met Tommy and Jack Miller?" I took a deep breath. "Tommy approached me in a Starbucks about 4 months ago. He asked if I could be his mom for a day for a school presentation. Initially I hesitated, but something in his sincerity touched me deeply." "And how did that relationship evolve?" Gradually, I started spending time with them, having dinner together, helping Tommy with homework, participating in simple family activities. I discovered a joy I hadn't experienced in years. Webb stood up for cross-examination. Miss Grant, in your financial statement, we see that you have a net worth of approximately $2 billion. Don't you think this economic difference creates an inappropriate power dynamic? No, I replied firmly. Jack Miller never asked me for money, never tried to take advantage of my situation. He's too proud for that. Our relationship is based on mutual respect and genuine love for the child. But surely you, a single woman of 42 with no children, represent a risk to the child's normal development. I felt anger rising in my throat. Mr. Webb, I have an MBA from Harvard. I built a company from scratch, and I employ over 1,000 people. I believe I am capable of contributing positively to a child's development. Financially, perhaps, but emotionally, what guarantee does the court have that this isn't just a temporary experiment? That's when Tommy stood up. Can I talk? He asked in that little voice that melted my heart. The room fell completely silent. The judge seemed surprised, but motioned for him to approach. Tommy, she said gently, do you understand what's happening here? Yes, ma'am. You're deciding where I'm going to live and with whom. And what would you like to tell us? Tommy looked directly at Daniel, then at Jack, and finally at me. I want to stay with my daddy, Jack. He really loves me, not because he has to. And I want Eleanor to be my mommy too, because she makes me laugh and helps me with math and makes Daddy smile in a way I've never seen before. Tears started to stream down my face. I couldn't control them. Uncle Daniel, Tommy continued, looking directly at the man, you never came to see me before. You never sent a birthday card. You never asked if I was okay when I had the flu. Why do you want to be my dad now? Daniel turned red, clearly without an adequate answer. Besides, Tommy added, turning to the judge, Eleanor's already family. She knows my favorite song, knows I don't like broccoli, and lets me stay up 15 minutes later on weekends. Isn't that being a mom? The room remained silent for long seconds. The judge cleared her throat. Very well. I will deliberate and return with my decision in 15 minutes. Those were the longest 15 minutes of my life. Jack held my hand in the hallway, and I felt that we were united not only by our love for Tommy, but by something deeper that had grown between us during those months. When we returned, the judge was serious, but not threatening. After considering all the testimonies and evidence presented, this court determines that Tommy Miller's best interest is to remain under the custody of Jack Miller. Mr. Daniel Marks's request is denied. Tommy screamed with joy and ran to hug Jack. Then he came to me, hugging me hard enough to break ribs. We won, Eleanor. We're a real family now. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in the same small Italian restaurant where Jack and I had our first official date, if you can even call it that, when Tommy was with us, asking questions about every dish on the menu. The place had become special for our strange but perfect family. Is Tommy asleep? I asked when Jack returned from the restroom. Like a rock. I guess all the excitement of the last few days finally caught up to him. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, just enjoying being together without legal pressures or judging eyes. Jack was different that night, more nervous, continuously checking his jacket pocket. Eleanor, he began, and his voice trembled slightly. These last few months have completely changed my life, not just because you helped us with that whole legal situation, but because... He stopped, took a deep breath, and to my complete surprise, knelt beside the table. Because you reminded me that it's possible to love again. You brought joy into our home, made Tommy smile in ways I hadn't seen since he was very small, and showed me that family can be created in the most unexpected ways. My heart was beating so fast I was sure the entire restaurant could hear it. Eleanor Grant, he continued, taking a small box from his pocket, will you marry me? Not for the money, not for convenience, but because I love you and want to spend the rest of my life building something real and beautiful with you and Tommy. The ring was simple, a modest solitaire that probably cost 3 of Jack's salaries. It was the most beautiful object I had ever seen. Jack, I whispered, tears streaming freely now, I... Say yes, a familiar little voice shouted from the other side of the restaurant. We turned and saw Tommy peeking from behind a column, clearly pretending to be asleep in the car. The kid had planned it with his dad. "Tommy Miller!" Jack exclaimed, but he was laughing. "You should be asleep." "I couldn't sleep knowing you were going to propose to Eleanor without me here." Tommy ran to our table. "So, Eleanor, are you going to marry us?" I looked at those two men, one big and one small, who had completely transformed my existence. 6 months ago, I was a rich but empty woman, living in a lonely penthouse, measuring success only in numbers and acquisitions. Now, I was being proposed to in a humble restaurant by a man who worked with his hands and a 6-year-old child who called me Mom. "Yes," I replied, and the word came out as a sigh of relief. "Yes, I accept." Jack slipped the ring onto my finger with hands that trembled slightly. Tommy jumped into my lap, shouting with joy, and for a moment we were just 3 completely happy people in a small Italian restaurant, creating the kind of memory that would last forever. "Now we're a real family," Tommy declared solemnly, "and no one can change that ever again." He was absolutely right. The wedding happened on a Saturday in September in Central Park, under a tree Tommy had chosen because it looked like a fairy house. Nothing like what I had imagined for my wedding, if I had ever really imagined getting married. There were no expensive flowers, no symphony orchestra, or a guest list full of moguls and celebrities. Just the 3 of us, the justice of the peace Jack had found online, and Mrs. Rodriguez from the apartment next door, who served as our witness because Tommy insisted she was part of the family too. I wore a simple, white dress that I bought at a regular department store, something I would never have done 6 months before. Jack was in the same suit from the hearing, but this time it fit perfectly because we had had it tailored. Tommy wore a blue bow tie he had chosen himself, insisting that important men wear bow ties to weddings. "Do you have your vows?" asked the judge, a bald, friendly man who was clearly used to informal park ceremonies. Jack turned to me, holding my hands with that tenderness that had won me over from day one. "Eleanor, when Tommy brought you into our lives, I thought it was just a coincidence. But now, I know it was fate. You showed me that it's possible to start over, that love has no expiration date, and that family is about choice, not just blood. I promise to love you, protect you, and build with you the kind of home that Tommy deserves and that we both always dreamed of." My turn came, and I felt a lump in my throat. "Jack, you and Tommy taught me that true success isn't measured in professional achievements or net worth. It's measured in laughs at dinner, in hugs before bed, and in knowing that someone loves you exactly as you are. I promise to be the wife and mother you deserve, and to use everything I have to protect our family. And I promise to be the best son in the world." Tommy spontaneously interrupted, making everyone laugh. We exchanged simple rings, white gold with no precious stones. When the judge pronounced us husband and wife, Jack kissed me softly while Tommy cheered and shouted, "Now we're a complete family." The party was at Jack's apartment, our apartment now. Mrs. Rodriguez brought a homemade chocolate cake. Tommy insisted on putting on music and dancing, and we spent the whole afternoon laughing and talking about our future plans. There was no Dom Perignon champagne, just soda and cheap beer. There was no live band, just the sound of Jack's phone playing songs Tommy chose. But it was perfect in a way no millionaire party ever could be. That night, after Tommy finally fell asleep, exhausted from all the excitement, Jack and I sat on the small balcony looking at the lights of Manhattan in the distance. "No regrets?" he asked, putting his arm around my shoulders. "None," I replied honestly. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." But there was something else I had been planning for weeks. Something that would represent not only our union, but a greater purpose for all the wealth I had accumulated over the years. The following Monday after our wedding, I called an extraordinary meeting of the Grant Equity Holdings Board. The conference room on the 40th floor was tense. Everyone knew about my new family life, and many questioned my sanity. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, standing at the head of the mahogany table I had presided over for 15 years, "today I announce the creation of the Second Chance Foundation." Robert Harrison, my longest-serving vice president, frowned. "Eleanor, what kind of foundation?" "An organization dedicated to supporting non-traditional families," single parents, couples who want to adopt, children in vulnerable situations. I will initially allocate $50 million of my personal assets to this project. The silence in the room was deafening. Margaret Chen, our financial director, was the first to speak. Eleanor, this represents a significant percentage of your liquid resources. Are you sure about this? Completely sure. I spent years accumulating wealth without a real purpose. Now I want to use that money for something that truly matters. And what exactly would be the focus of this foundation? Asked Jonathan Webb, always the most practical. 3 main pillars, I explained, walking to the whiteboard. First, financial support for families facing custody battles like the one we faced. Second, educational and professional training programs for single parents who need to improve their living conditions. Third, creation of community centers where children can have extracurricular activities regardless of their family's financial situation. Robert leaned back in his chair. Eleanor, I admire your passion, but shouldn't this be discussed with your personal financial advisors instead of the company board? I'm discussing it here because I want Grant Equity Holdings to be an official partner of the foundation, not just as a donor, but by offering expertise in financial management and employment opportunities for parents who go through our programs. For the next 2 hours, I presented a detailed plan that I had secretly developed in recent weeks. I had researched other similar organizations, identified gaps in the current family support system, and created a sustainable model that could be replicated in other cities. The first unit will be here in Queens, I continued, in the neighborhood where my family lives. I want the children from Tommy's school to have access to the same resources that children in Manhattan have. Margaret raised an important question. How will you measure the success of this initiative? Not just in numbers, I replied. Of course, we will track how many families we serve, how many parents get better jobs, how many children improve academically. But the true success will be measured in smiles, in families that stay together, in children who grow up knowing they are loved and have opportunities. Jonathan still seemed skeptical. Eleanor, don't you think you're being overly influenced by your recent personal situation? Yes, I am being influenced, I admitted. And that's exactly what makes this project authentic. It's not charity done from an ivory tower. It's action based on real experience, on understanding firsthand how the system can be unfair to families that don't fit the traditional mold. At the end of the meeting, the board unanimously approved the partnership. Not just because it was a good corporate social responsibility opportunity, but because they saw in me a passion and determination that had been lacking in recent years. 6 months later, the Second Chance Foundation opened its doors in a renovated building 2 blocks from Tommy's school. The center had classrooms for tutoring, professional workshops, space for recreational activities, and, most importantly, a team of social workers and volunteer lawyers to help families in complex legal situations. Tommy was my first official consultant. He tested all the games in the playroom, approved the cafeteria menu, and suggested we have a special day each month where kids can bring their pets. His idea was implemented immediately. Jack became the center's maintenance coordinator, finally able to leave the 3 exhausting jobs he had. His experience with manual labor qualified him perfectly to keep the space running, and his sensitivity with families made him a father figure to many children who attended the center. You know what makes me proudest? He told me one night, after a long day inaugurating the new wing of the center. It's not that you spent millions on this. It's that you understood the real problem and created a solution that works. Our family routine had settled into a natural, warm rhythm. We woke up at 6:30 because Tommy insisted on having breakfast with me before I left for the office. Jack would make pancakes or scrambled eggs while I helped Tommy with any homework he had forgotten the night before. Mommy Eleanor, Tommy said one morning, using the combination he had invented to refer to me, there's a parent-teacher conference at school today. Are you 2 going? Of course, I replied, checking my schedule on my phone. I'll reschedule my 3 o'clock meeting. You don't have to, Jack protested. I can go alone. Jack Miller, I said firmly. We're a family. We go to all school meetings, presentations, and events together. That's non-negotiable. Tommy smiled with satisfaction. "See, Daddy, I told you she'd want to go." Sometimes at night, when Tommy was asleep and Jack was on the couch reading or watching some TV show, I would find myself observing our life and wondering how I had gotten there. The woman who 2 years earlier considered family a distraction from business now couldn't imagine life without those two men. "What are you thinking about?" Jack would always ask whenever he caught me in those moments of contemplation. "How lucky I am," I would reply. And it was true. Tommy grew every day, not just physically, but emotionally. The security of having a stable family had transformed him into an even more confident and loving child. His grades improved, he made new friends at school, and most importantly, he developed a natural generosity that constantly moved me. "Mommy Eleanor," he said one afternoon while we were doing his math homework, "can we bring some of my toys to the center? There are kids there who don't have much." "Of course, sweetie. Which toys do you want to donate?" "The ones I don't use anymore, but I'll choose the cool ones, not the broken ones." It was exactly this kind of attitude that confirmed to me every day that we had created something special together. Our family may not have started in a traditional way, but it was growing with solid values and genuine love. During our first wedding anniversary, we hosted a party at the Foundation's center. Not for us, but for all the families we had helped throughout the year. There were over 100 people, single parents who had found new jobs through our programs, children who had improved in school with our tutoring, families who had won legal battles with the help of our volunteer lawyers. Tommy was radiant, running among the guests, introducing his mommy Eleanor and his daddy Jack to everyone who didn't know us yet. He had become our little ambassador, always proud of the family we had built together. "You saved my family," said Maria Santos, a single mother who had gained permanent custody of her 2 children with our legal assistance. "Without you, I would have lost my boys." These words were worth more than any profit I had generated in my corporate career. Jack held my hand as we listened to story after story of transformation and hope. "I think we found our true purpose," he whispered in my ear. I looked around the room, Tommy playing with other children, families gathered celebrating their victories, Jack handing out hugs as if he were a father to all those children. And I knew he was right. We had found much more than purpose. We had found the real meaning of success, the ability to transform not only our own lives, but to create ripples of positive change that spread far beyond what we could imagine. That night, after everyone had left and Tommy was asleep, Jack and I sat on the balcony of our apartment, which was now officially our home, not just his. "You know what's most incredible about all this?" I asked, nestled in his embrace. "What?" "It all started with a 6-year-old boy asking me to be his mom for a day. And now, 2 years later, I can't remember what my life was like before you two." "Me neither," Jack replied, kissing the top of my head, "and I hope I never have to remember." Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. From Tommy's room, we heard a small murmur as he spoke in his sleep. My family, my real family, and that's exactly what we were.